Hi guys, if you've watched my last waffle video, you'll know that I wasn't expecting to be back talking about quads quite so soon, as I was really going to spend my time flying and trying to improve my skills as opposed to endlessly building more and more quads. But this kind of changed things for me. Now, before I talk about the quad itself, I need to sort of give you a little bit of background and history, which is important to me in terms of this quad. Maybe 6 or 7 months ago, I sort of got really interested in making a super light 5-inch quad, and at the time the Quav or QAV ULX I think had just been released, and I played around with that with 205s, and then I bought some real ACC RFX I think they were called, which converted to running 1407 motors. And the reason where I got that idea from was basically on RC groups. There are a lot of people out there building sort of really super light 5-inch quads out of tubular carbon, and at the time they were running them on 1407s and experimenting with 5-inch props. And these line of sight guys were kind of running with no camera or anything like that, and the stuff that they could do was incredible. So I kind of set out to build my version of one, but the tech at the time was not where it is right now. It was pretty heavy stuff. The frames themselves, by the time you built them up with steel screws and all the rest of it, came out very heavy. And while the quads flew relatively well, I didn't really feel there was much benefit to them, so I moved on to super light 4-inch quads, and later did a 3-inch quad as well. Now, when I was researching motors for my 4-inch and 3-inch quad, so this is my Space Cowboy XLR 4 Superlight, and here's my Avant 3-inch. When I was researching motors for these, I was speaking a little bit to Engineer X, who did motor tests, and he was the guy who originally gave me the idea to use the RCX 1407 on this 3-inch, and the line of sight guys were the guys who originally tipped me off to the Rotorgeeks 7075 series as being really light, which is what they were looking for. So anyway, I talked to Engineer X. I showed him my Leggero S4L Extreme Edition Super Light with the Runcam Split, which he was really impressed with. Subsequently, I showed him my 3-inch video, and he mentioned a chap called Adam Featherstone, who is a fellow Brit, and he was basically experimenting with sub 250 gram 5-inch quads. So I kind of subscribed to Adam's channel and sort of followed what he was up to and asked him a few questions. And basically the quad that Adam and Aeronaut had come up with is this one here. And where this basically stemmed from was the impending drone regulations, which obviously a draft bill has been, or a draft has been brought out, and they were kind of annoyed at this. So they, as a technical challenge, what happened is Adam decided to see if he could make a 5-inch quad below 250 grams, and they started off by converting existing frames to make them lighter. Subsequently, Adam did the drawings for this quad, and his friend Aeronaut, who's a part-time frame designer, did the 3D modelling work and basically CNC work, and the Aeronaut was born. At the time I originally contacted Adam and spoke about this frame, he mentioned that it would probably be out on Hobby RC at some point, and the name Featherlight was basically a Mickey take from Adam's surname, which is Featherstone. And I kept half an eye on Hobby RC, and I never saw the frame. And anyway, a few months passed, and I saw the Featherlight frame appear on DroneBit for 35 quid, and I kind of thought, oh, that's Adam's frame. So I kind of looked at this frame a few times, and I kind of I really wanted to experiment with it, but I didn't want to go out and buy a whole new set of motors and gear, etc. For something that would really just be an experiment for me, and I didn't know if I would actually really like it. So anyway, I contacted Adam again and said, oh, I've seen this frame, blah blah blah. I've got some rotorgeeks 3600 kV 1407s, I've got this, I've got that. You know, I noticed that you recommend a lower kV, because on rotor builds and various other places Adam's talked about his motor tests and things like that, and he's basically tested most of the motors and most of the different kVs out there on this particular quad. So anyway, to cut a long story short, I contacted him, asked him a lot of questions about my existing stuff, and he basically replied to me and said, my one is at Hobby IC. I said to them to basically give it to a good home. So if you contact them, they'll probably post it to you. And so I kind of thought, oh great, you know, I'll get a free frame. It'll only cost me postage, and I can just tinker around with my existing parts and see if I can make anything worthwhile out of it. And then yesterday, this arrived, which is the Featherlight 190 frame, but it's fully built, and I was not expecting that. So I'm somewhat blown away, A, by the fact that Adam gave Hobby RC a fully built quad, his fully built quad, to basically find a new home, and B, that they sent it to me with no questions asked. So I'm just absolutely flabbergasted. So what you see here is the Featherlight 190 frame, and in all his motor testing, Adam decided that the best motors were the Cobra 1407 3200 kV, which actually work out at 3000 kV. And basically what he found in his testing is that while this frame could run higher kV motors, and those motors wouldn't burn out, the actual performance sort of plateaued, but the battery performance died a death. So, you know, if running 3600, 3850, I think he went up to, the performance gains weren't really anything to talk about, but it had a huge impact on battery life. So he decided on these as the best overall motor, and that's what you see in front of me. So basically the components on this quad are essentially what Adam posted on Rotor Builds with the updated motors. So we've got an Asgard V2 all-in-one F4 flight controller and 24 amp BL Heli ESCs. On top of that we've got a TBS Unify race. Sat on top of that we've got an XM Plus FR Sky receiver. We've got a TBS dipole antenna and a Runcam micro, and at the back we've got a little XD30 connector and a capacitor. And the capacitor I find slightly odd because I've never used a capacitor on any of my 3 or 4 inch quads, because they really don't tend to suffer from sort of huge ESC spikes, voltage spikes, which cause interference in your FPV camera. But there's one on there, so I suppose it's better than nothing at all. But as I said, this arrived yesterday and I'm completely floored that you know, this is essentially given away. I mean, all the components are top notch. And the frame itself, I mean, if I talk about just the facts, the bit that's going to really interest you, which is the frame. The frame itself weighs 28 grams, so it's super light. I mean, my 3-inch Avant frame weighs pretty much the same, I think, 27 grams, and that's a 3-inch. So the fact that this weighs 28 grams and is a 5-inch is incredible, and you can see how they've done it. So basically what we've got here is 5mm thick by 5mm wide carbon arms, and I don't know if this is indicative of the actual frames that he sells, but the carbon on this is really nice. We've got chamfered edges. The whole thing is really stiff. If you think how slender these arms are, it is super stiff, and because they're so slender, it's really gonna cut through the air, which it will need to do because it's so light. And basically the way this works is you've got this one piece bottom plate and you've got 4 screws, 4 bolts at the bottom, and these look like they might be titanium on this one, but basically what they do is run up. You've got either an aluminium or steel nut here, and then above that he's basically simply sat the Asgard V2, a couple of nylon standoffs, and then basically used a nylon nut to screw this 3D printed pod on top. And as you can see, it gives really good camera protection. So I've got to say, I really like the frame. In terms of how it's been built, it's a really pretty design, really simple design, like all the best frames. I mean, I suppose the major weakness, if we're being critical, is the fact that this top pod is being held on essentially by a nylon standoff. So I suppose in a really bad crash you would probably break the nylon standoff, but given this weighs naff all, it's probably far stronger than you would expect. And talking about weight, let's see what it weighs. So if I get my scales out, so we know the frame is 28 grams. So fully built with a LiPo strap, it weighs 136 grams. And as the average 850 more 4S LiPo weighs around 100 grams, 14 grams to play with, which is plenty for props. On this particular quad you would likely be using bi-blades. Adam's done quite a bit of research into which ones work best, and his findings are you want sort of 5 or 4 oils, dual blades. He's tried numerous props, the Racecraft 5038, 5045, lots of different versions, and he feels at this KV with these motors that the 504 is the best compromise, what should I say, best option in terms of all-out performance and battery life. So it's a really sort of nifty little quad, and as I said, I'm just absolutely floored that this landed yesterday, and I opened it up expecting a frame and got a fully built quad with top-notch components. So a huge thank you to Adam and Aeronaut FPV for designing this and cutting this frame. A few things to talk about, because this is hugely light. Clearly it's going to be below the drone laws which are coming in, where the max weight is 250 grams before you've got to register your quad or whatever they want you to do. Personally speaking, I'm just going to ignore it because I've kind of glanced at what they've said, and it clearly isn't aimed at racing quads, it's aimed at proper drones with GPS and all the rest of it, and I don't really see how I fit into what they're talking about. So I'm just going to ignore it until such a time as PC Plod decides to patrol the woodland that I fly in, which is probably never going to happen. But the handy thing about something like this, being a cynic, is if you were to carry something like this around with you, even if you never flew it, it's a handy thing to pull out if some nosy neighbour or dog walker calls the police on you, and you can then say, oh, it's under 250 grams with a battery, jog on. In terms of how it performs, I'm going on what Adam said here, and he's a guy like me who likes super light 4-inch quads. I flew the Leggero, I fly my XLR Space Cowboy. He flies an Aero, which is essentially pretty much a similar frame to the Avant Leggero. And what he's kind of said in terms of this is, it has the agility of a small quad, you know, a 3-inch or a 4-inch quad, and it has the speed of a 5-inch quad, but you have to fly it really aggressively, because obviously given its super low weight, it has zero momentum, as all these little quads do. So you will essentially have to fly this with its nose completely facing down, or as much as you can, to get anything out of it. You know, if you run it with a 15 or a 20 degree camera angle, it's not really going to do anything other than go up and down. So this is a quad for people who like to fly aggressively, more of a racing quad than a freestyle quad. Although I dare say if you put a bigger battery on it and didn't mind about the weight limit, it would probably still fly pretty well. Certainly my 4-inch quads fly absolutely fine with 1300 mAh batteries. It just turns them into a kind of more lazy freestyle quad than something that zips around. But I'm absolutely blown away by this. Can't wait to go out and test it. It's going to be some time before I do, because I'll have to take it apart, flash the receiver, because this is an EU one and I use an international QX7. I don't know how it's set up. It is running Betaflight, but I don't know what edition it's running or anything like that. But I'm basically going to take it out and really just see how it flies on Adam's settings, because it'd be interesting to see how he sets his quads up as opposed to how I would do it. And then from that point on, I'll start tweaking the settings in Betaflight to make it fly how I do. One thing to mention actually, on Aeronaut FPV's website, you can buy a pod, the 3D printed part that fits a Runcam Split. So there's a design challenge, to make it below 250 grams with a battery carrying a Runcam Split. That's probably going to be a fairly hefty challenge. The one thing I'd mention on this is using the Asgard V2, which is a really good board from everything I've read about. I've never used one of these, and the reason why is two reasons actually. I'm not a particularly huge fan of boards that have the flight controller and ESC in one, and I completely get why Adam has used it in this case, and it is the best thing to do. But when these things are 65-70 quid a pop, you know, if you get a bit of water on it or it'll lose an ESC, you know, you've got to replace the entire thing, and for me that's always been too risky, given that I crash every 2 minutes. So what I tend to do, as I've said before, is use two 20x20 boards, a 20x20 F4 omnibus on top, and then just a little 20x20 20 amp ESC below. And in my conversation with Adam, he didn't know if I'd be able to fit that in, but looking at it, if you look at how small this stack is, because this was planned for a Runcam Split which never went in, if you look how small my stack is, I reckon I could get it inside this pretty easily. And if push came to shove and you needed more height, well, of course you could just simply raise these plastic standoffs and raise the pod up a little bit. So yeah, so I'm really kind of curious as to see how it flies. As I said, the frame feels really strong, and I don't suppose it's going to break too easily by this this part here. Certainly not the arms, because it's so light. Motors are probably the thing that you're more likely to break, simply because there isn't a huge amount of motor protection. Obviously you've got two screws, you've got a little bit of protection if you hit front on, but if you hit something sideways, your motor's going to take the hit as opposed to the actual frame. But as I said, this was a technical challenge for Adam and Aeronaut, and the only way you're going to get a 5-inch quad below 250 grams with the battery is to make things as lightweight as you humanly can. So yeah, so huge thanks to Adam Featherstone. It's a beautiful little quad, and I'm really looking forward to flying it. In terms of a few things that I'll probably do, I'll probably remove the XT30 and replace it with an XT60. So I'll have to be careful on weight there, and the reason why I'll do that is simply because on all of my quads I use XT60s, and while that adds a little bit of extra weight, it means that the 850 batteries that I usually use on these at a pinch, if I'm short of batteries, I'll use on my bigger quads, the super light ones, and vice versa. Sometimes, as I said, I'll fly this guy with a 1300 battery just to give myself tons of flight time, and it turns it into a really nice kind of freestyle quad. So yeah, so I thought that'd be interesting. As I said, shout out to those guys. I'll leave links to the Aeronaut website. I'll leave a link to Adam's video where this was featured, and also the R Groups forum, where you can see where the idea originally came from. But other than that, thanks a lot guys. Have a great Christmas, and when I get this sorted out, I'll possibly do some flight footage and maybe talk about my findings. Thanks again. Cheers. Bye bye.